taking more of what you've said, I just want to hope everyone is okay in their bubble and in their isolation, and that if there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. But we will be in touch over the next couple of weeks just to see how you are all going. So it will lead to an introduction of our guest speaker, Alama, ex-All Black and current Auckland Mighty Team Cup coach. So welcome, Alama. Thank you very much for giving up your Tuesday night and coming on this and answering some questions that we have for you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ben. So good evening, everyone. Good to see a lot of faces there, or a lot of names, I suppose, and some familiar names there. So yeah, thanks for the invite.
No worries. Thanks for saying yes. So we'd like to do a bit of an introduction of the person. So Alama is All Black number 942. He played 65 games for Wellington, 42 games for the Hurricanes, 24 games for Suntory in Japan, 5 games for Samoa, and 40 games for the All Blacks. From there, he transitioned into coaching. He was an assistant at Suntory between 2005 and 2007. He was assistant coach at Wellington in 2007. He was a Wellington Academy head coach in 2008. He was in an assistant for the Hurricanes between 2009 and 2014. Samoa assistant coach 2014-15 before taking over 2015-17, and is currently the Auckland Mighty Team Cup coach at Auckland since 2018. So it's fair to say we've got a very experienced and knowledgeable both player and coach who's got heaps of expertise and is more than happy to share what he knows. So welcome, Alama. Thank you very much, and I'm sure everyone will get something out of tonight.
No worries. Thanks, Ants, for the intro. I certainly feel like a dinosaur after the way you actually read all that out. But no, thank you. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So how has your bubble been since we've been in lockdown? What's that look like for you?
Well, the bubble at the moment is I need a haircut, and I really do miss my golf. Yeah, getting pretty anxious like most people, especially with a lot of uncertainty around. But no, good to keep ticking things along.
Nice. And just for anyone who does have a question, please feel free to type that into the chat button, and hopefully we can come through that throughout the session. So how has life changed for you in isolation, just in general?
Well, I suppose from a work perspective, Ants and everyone, with the uncertainty there is around the Mitre 10, our efforts are already into that, into forecasting what's actually happening later on in the season. Pretty much crisis management mode. We try and plan for different scenarios, gather some information, probably realign a few goals and a few people, resources, especially in the Auckland scene and the Mitre 10 scene. We depend a lot on the Super and the Blues. So really just trying to focus our energy into planning all that and staying on core to make sure that you're sort of up to date with the latest news. So that's all we can do. We're very lucky, I suppose, that our tournament's at the back end of Super. So we get a little bit of time to plan, but yeah, you never know. There's a lot of uncertainty around.
Cool. So I guess before we get into the whole refereeing side of things, which is why people are here, do you have any highlights from your playing days, and how did you transition from?
Yeah, I think I just got the front end of that, Ants, but some highlights. Is that right, from the playing days?
And then the transition from playing into coaching.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, well, some highlights. Highlights as a player, I suppose my debuts for the various teams I represented. Obviously Wellington, the Lions, and internationally for Samoa, and then for the All Blacks, and then also the Hurricanes. I suppose the Super Rugby. That was pretty special back then. So yeah, certainly enjoyed that from a playing perspective. Yeah, and then transitioning into coaching, I started off down in Wellington. I injured my leg in FIFA, and then I went into club coaching. Alice Meacham, who was the Western Suburbs coach at the time, he got me to help out with the team. And then I really just, I was a player coach coming through the scene. Went up to Suntory with Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones is my mentor, and pretty much just went under the Australian and I suppose the Japanese sort of mindset around coaching and techniques and that. So I feel very, very lucky to be part of that sort of fraternity, I suppose. And then I came back to New Zealand, and so that's pretty much my sort of upbringing. A lot of passion for coaching, especially around the Pacifica players. A lot of players, but not a lot of coaches. So I suppose I'm just one of those guys coming through now.
Nice. So the question I do have here is, if we start talking about the referee side of things now, with the Pacifica, that's obviously a huge part of, there's a lot of Pacifica players playing in the Auckland competition right through the various grades. Do you have any tips on how we can better interact with the Pacifica as referees while on the field and even off the field? And yeah, any tips on that to help us out?
Any tips? I suppose just go harder than at the laws and all that. I think it's a really good one, Ants, because I'm just speaking on before I came to Auckland, when I was recruiting for the Samoan scene, and I came to Auckland quite a lot in the past, and there's a lot of competitions around the village, comps, and obviously the age grade stuff here. So just watching how a lot of different people reacted to the referees and the different teams. But now that I'm actually working here and getting to know a lot of the referees and watching a few of the tournaments now, I suppose the respect factor that the players need to obviously give to the referees is really important. That's first and foremost. But how do you manage that? How do you get that out of the teams? Are there ways that you can actually connect with the team beforehand? And it's very difficult, I understand, at the community level, but I'll probably just try and form relationships with players, with coaches, and I know it's very difficult in different cases, but at the end of the day, if there can be a relationship or some form of understanding at the start before you get into it, then so be it. But just because they're Pacifica doesn't mean that they're above the law, and I know that's a lot of problems at the moment, that some of them actually think like that. But you're there to do a job, and you get respected for actually putting your foot down and going through what you need to do. So I suppose that's probably my advice for now, Ants, around that question.
Cool. No, thank you very much. That's very, very insightful. So in terms of recruitment of referees, obviously that's an area everywhere in the world struggles with is recruitment of referees. Talking about Pacifica people, like, is there any way that we can sort of help us with recruitment, with promoting to Pacifica so that they want to pick up the whistle and still stay involved in rugby in that kind of way? Or is it just treating Pacifica people like a normal, as it would for anyone else?
Yeah, I'll share with you another something else I did as a coach when I first got back here. I think there's a couple of Wellington names out there, and I think Walsh is there, David Walsh. But when I was coaching down at the Hurricanes, one of the biggest drives that I had was to get Wellington Samoans up and running again. And in terms of doing that, I really connected with the referees to make sure that we were at least on par of what to expect. Now, I was very fortunate to have a strong relationship with a good friend that's obviously passed on, and he actually sort of started my real interest in this, getting a relationships with referees. So I know a lot of you know Rob Neru, and Rob Neru was a good mate of mine, and we went into start up this little business of advantage for me, like many of you know, and I was interested in the analysis part of our company at the time, and Rob also was a very strong advocate for Pacific Island rugby in Wellington at the time. And so we sort of worked together around that, understanding how can we actually get Pacific players, but then also encourage referees or people that were actually had an interest in reffing. And so me and Rob sort of worked through that, and we couldn't do that if we didn't have the support of the union. And with Wellington Rugby at the time, Walshy really supported us from a union's point of view. It sort of helped that I was in the Hurricanes at the time. I was assistant coach, and we had quite a lot of alignment around that. But we really recruited players, and we also recruited referees or islanders that were keen to ref. And we all actually involved them in the planning and the tournaments, making them feel valued, and also having a position where they could actually contribute and be heard. And there were a few referees that came through the scene around that time, and I still see down there that there's still a couple of refs that are floating around that came through from that era. But it was actually beyond the referees, and it went to getting more opportunities for players to put their hand up for the Wellington Lions, and then getting the alignment between the Lions, the Bees, the Colts, and then obviously if you go through, hopefully to the Hurricanes. So in that whole process, I was very lucky to have Rob to give us some guidance around that, and it was something I really enjoyed, and I was quite passionate about every year, end of the year really, after the Hurricanes, you go into your recruiting for obviously the Mitre 10. You keep on having a look around, but then that passion of sort of helping referees and young Pacifica players coming through, giving them an opportunity, was something that was quite passionate. It was a big passion of mine, and I'm hoping to do that here. We've got a meeting tomorrow to try and share that with Pacifica people here, and then hopefully we can get some form of alignment out of that, and referees as well. So not sure that's insightful around that sort of stuff, Ants, but that was one way I did it back in the day.
Nice, I like that. It's cool. So, while playing, were there any referees that you enjoyed being refereed by, and why?
Enjoyed.
A loose term.
And a loose term. I enjoyed Paddy O'Brien back in the day. Paddy was quite good. I loved how Paddy, I think the art of Paddy when he was, he knew the game within the game, if you know what I mean. He knew what Fitzy got up to. He knew all the tricks of the trade, and he was very quick to pull players up on that. So I really actually enjoyed watching him. I enjoyed Craig Joubert back in the day as well. I loved his mannerism on the field. I liked the way he was very firm, very fair, but he knew his communication skills was very good with the players, and I just liked the way he managed the game, I suppose, if there's a way to put it. So those two coaches, I suppose, come to mind right now. There's a lot of good coaches coming through. A lot of good referees coming through now. I think we're in a good position, especially in New Zealand.
So as a coach, is that what you're looking for as well? When obviously you Mitre 10 Cup, looking at referees who can deal with that stuff early on and know what players are doing and when they're doing it, and being able to manage a game. Is that what you sort of see as a good referee? Referees who can do that?
Speaking from the Mitre 10, I think referees at different levels, obviously, but for the Mitre 10, we had Paul Honus that looked after our relationship with referees. And I think that the biggest thing that we find is making sure that we have channels to communicate. And I find that we've got that to date, and it's been good. I've had a few run-ins with a few referees on that, just looking at the screen. You always have to. We're all in it together. But I found that being quite upfront in a manner that you can actually get your point across is really important. I used to be a coach that walked away pretty grumpy in that, but at the moment I feel like I could actually front a referee straight after a game, or when the right time is. I'll give you an example. We played Waikato last year in Hamilton, and after the game, I think Richard Kelly was I think it was Richard that was refereeing our game. Had a few questions, and obviously you get emotional after a game, but went through the right channels, Paul Honus, and then obviously Richard, and then just getting an email trail and being very clear as to why we sort of, a little bit frustrated in that. And it's amazing the clarity you get when you actually put the emotion aside and you get the other person's view on it. And the other person, in this case, obviously the referee. It's amazing what a bit of time actually does to settle things down, and then you go back and review. And Richard and we had a really good exchange, which was very productive, constructive. And half of the things he was right, half of the things he was wrong at, and we were the same. And I thought we got to a place that was really good. At a time when you confront a referee straight after a game, I had a couple of questions in the Wellington boy back in the day. And I think that's really important to have that relationship, so that you can actually have those communication channels, or get your point across, I suppose. But there's enough channels now, and to actually get that across without standing on too many people's toes, I suppose, at the Mitre 10 level anyway.
Yeah, nice. And do you have those conversations very often throughout the season, or is it just when you do have some questions, that's when you're probe? Do you have them often before and after games?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if it's around the game, yes, absolutely. Different coaches have different routines, and in terms of myself, I like to be very clear on obviously which ref is coming as soon as I can find out. And then once that is, then getting an alignment as to what the expectation is. Are there any things that we need to clear up on our side? And also just, offer some feedback and some clarity that we might need from that particular ref as well. I know that's easier said than done sometimes, because I know some referees are allocated late. But I think if you're in game mode, then yeah, definitely. But I like to think it's every referee that I actually come across to when and anywhere, if I'm watching club games or whatever, I do make the effort to go up and obviously say hello in there as well, because everyone's got a tough job, and I understand that you guys go through the same pressures, but I think it's important that you actually acknowledge it, because it cracks me up. Some of the coaches I've come across actually hold grudges on referees, and it's amazing actually what they just get bogged down on it, and you don't get anywhere. But I know we're all doing a job to obviously to get the game up and running, and we are in control. And so if you don't work together, then nothing's going to actually be achieved. And we're in the business of entertaining and making people better. So trying to make each other better is also very fundamental in my eyes.
Yeah, well, we're in the business of people, right? And if we're not aligned and working together, then we're not going to improve, and people just hold grudges, and it's not good for rugby at all. So fully agree with that. So with that, how much analysis do you do on referees before a game? And how can we work? You talked about the relationship between referee and coach. How can we be better at that as well?
Different coaches have different systems, I suppose, and different methods, I suppose, Ants. But from my point of view, it's the word that you use is relationships. It's, if you don't have a relationship, then at least make a phone call to actually form a relationship, and that's obviously the first and foremost thing is to have some form of connection. I know some coaches find that very difficult, but once again, it's important that you have some form of clarity as to what what's expected out of the game, and you never know, that referee might actually want to reach out as well. So, and some referees actually you don't need to ring. So, I think to me it's really about sort of working together so that the game is actually in good hands. There's nothing worse than finding out that some of the disagreements or some of the things that you could have viewed could have been alleviated if you actually even formed a phone call or got to know them. I'm a little bit different because I sort of know a lot of the referees now, and you tend not to ask many questions anyway. So if there's anything that really concerns you, myself, then I actually reach out for them. Other than that, then you just know your role. Your role is the coach, and just respect the the key decisions that have to be made by them. I think the other part, just leading to that answer, is it's okay, the referee-coach relationship, but fundamentally the referee-player relationship is actually the most important one, because they're the ones that have to deal with the referee. And one of the things that I think I really enjoy is having referees come to watch trainings, so you actually get a feel for the actual team environment, the team strategies, or sometimes referees can actually get a feel for particular players, and whether you like it or not, everyone's always earmarked, or there's some baggage that goes with particular people. So sometimes in training environments, or in a casual conversation away from the pressures of a weekend game, you get to learn about each other. I remember back in the day when I think Jonathan Kaplan was passing through one time, and he just came up to a club training, and I was an All Black at the time, and it was just actually a club training, and we sort of just got chatting, and it actually opened up his eyes to obviously how the game was in New Zealand, and some of the players that he had to obviously referee, and it gave him a little bit of insight as well. So I think that's really important, that you form relationships with teams and coaches, and then sort of take it from there, I suppose. But as I said, I've been around a little bit longer than others, so it might be a little bit difficult. But I think reaching out and having the awareness or the openness to do that is an opportunity. Maybe easier said than done for some others, but you can always try.
Yeah, 100%. And is that a common thing? Do you have many referees coming to your trainings now, or is that something that doesn't happen very often?
A few we've offered to. A few have asked to actually come, and yeah, we have an open door policy. There's a few referees on there now that I've just seen that have come to a couple of ours. So yeah, it's always open, absolutely. And whether that's for my team here or for all the teams I've coached, so certainly referees are always welcome to come in.
Nice. Cool. I'll be there throughout the season. We'll go to a couple of questions from the group. How has coaching, this is from Warren, how has coaching changed during your time? And do the different countries approach coaching in the games mentally? Who's that talking?
That's right. Can you just repeat that, Ants? Because I couldn't hear. I could just hear that person talking. What was the question again?
How has coaching changed during your time? Start with that one.
Yeah, well, coaching's changed quite a bit. Back in the days when sort of got told what to do and all that, to now sort of making sure that your coach.
Is on the line.
Hey guys, can you just put yourselves on mute, please?
That's right.
Thank you.
All good. It was a good party there by the sounds of it. How it's changed over time? I think the focus now really is about, there's a lot of mental stuff that goes in now, Ants, in terms of player welfare, and sort of obviously looking after the players a lot better these days. There's a lot of empowerment, I suppose, is a word that needs to be looked after in coaching now. Working together as groups and leaders, many units. A lot of those types of dynamics are now sort of handed over to the players. I suppose compared to back in the day. When I was in Japan, it was a little bit different, obviously, under Eddie Jones, but when he was coaching the Brumbies back in the day, we had playbooks. It was quite prescriptive, and as the flow came through the years, the Wallabies, I suppose, played like that as well. But then New Zealand have always been about space and speed, and having the ability to coach that now with different skills and different mindsets, I suppose, is the challenge. Making sure that player welfare and their minds are mentally onto the game now. Probably not as resilient as they used to be, and I say that with the ultimate respect. not as resilient, but still pretty keen to learn. And I think you got to be a lot more persistent these days. That it's actually okay to fail, and it's okay to get back up. It's okay to keep going. And probably fundamentally, the one that I did think about when I was talking to this particular group, Ants, is that also to admit that that you do get it wrong. You do get it wrong quite a lot of times in my coaching career. I think as long as you understand and you own up to that, not really a sign of weakness. It's a sign of the fact that you need to get better, and you're pretty much, by saying that, you lock yourself into a contract to actually make sure you go away and make yourself better. You can't just say it, but I think the admission of making a mistake is really important, and then not dwelling on it. It's important that you move on. Coaching these days, that particular area is very important. And I suppose for referees, it could potentially be the same. I'm not sure how quickly you can flush a mistake and move on, or how quickly you can acknowledge that you might not get it right all the time. But I think that's where respect comes through. And certainly in my job around the coaching is important that you learn from your mistakes, but and then you move on.
We do put a lot of emphasis on that in the referees space as well, because if we start dwelling on it, then we're going to make more mistakes, and it's going to affect us in the game. So, honestly, we do put a lot of emphasis on just flushing it, moving on, learning from it, and just trying not to do it again. So, 100%. Would there be any laws that you would change in the game, and why?
Yeah, I often, I'm not sure if Ants were you at the referee and coaches conference we had. I think it was last year or something. Start of last year. I think it was start of last year before the season. But there was a clip there that was shown by around clean out. And I was quite vocal around getting the technique right around clean out these days as a safety issue from a coaching point of view. Because we are asking players to actually, the scenario I'm giving is the jackling. How do you remove a jackler who's already stapled over the ball? And I suppose, obviously, we keep this, well, I already said it anyway, but in the past, but as coaches, you're trying to actually tell the players to get rid of him by obviously hurting him, and to try and get around, because technically the law, you can't come from the side. So that contest is effectively over, and how do we actually work together to try and make that a safer area? I get very nervous around the breakdown when I see people flying in now, and I know obviously anything towards the head is a good rule in that, but as we all know, referees and coaches, that's a very fluid and a very dangerous area that makes the game quite exciting, but it also makes it very dangerous if we get it wrong. And I think if there is some consistency around the interpretation of that, and whether we do allow some form of allowance to go sideways to release, obviously you get the go to roll where they actually get rid of him, but the coming and obviously trying to snap his neck so he actually releases to get rid of him, I think those days are gone, and it's just a matter of time before some, hopefully not, but touch wood, that we might see some serious injuries around that, because the game is getting faster, the game players are getting stronger. Obviously, power is speed now, and speed is power, so it's a lot different now. So we just got to be very careful. But that's one area that I think if we can get some alignment around, or how we actually work that through. No matter what we do, your job is to referee it, Ants. But my job is to find a way around it. And but if the law is, if we can have an alignment around that law and how we actually approach it, especially when it comes to safety, I see there's a lot of work around the ball in the air. So there's still a lot more work to go around that area. I suppose a bugbear for me, probably because I'm a back, Ants. But fundamentally, if you're more late, you're pretty much gone these days. It's such an art form that some teams get away with murder, really, around that area in terms of setup, how the setup is right from the start. So trust me, I've had arguments with my forwards coaches as to how to sort it out. So, but it is, and that's once again, part of the game that's special for us, and we just got to find better ways to deal with it. But the safety one is the breakdown, as far as I'm concerned.
I must admit, when I've seen it on TV, it's just missiles just flying in, and I cringe just looking at that, and it is dangerous. And
I used to love it.
I'm glad that a coach is.
I used to go hunting for those things. There's a couple of referees in there nodding their heads, I bet you. But yeah, I loved it. At one stage of my career, the only thing I wanted was to go hunt people like that. And you wonder why I never passed the ball back in my day.
So with the whole safety, or just as the laws in general, we talk a lot about material effects and letting the game flow for the good of the game and all that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on material effect versus refereeing the law as it is? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sorry, Anthony, can you repeat it? I just missed that the first part of your question. Can you just say that again?
We just in the referee space, we talk about material effects. Obviously, seeing someone do something that is illegal, but for the better of the game, letting it flow. What are your thoughts on that compared to refereeing the game by the law?
Oh, geez, mate. I could get in trouble if I actually commented to that question. How do I answer that?
You can take it out.
No. I think it's a good one. To avoid the question wouldn't be good, eh? I'll actually go back to my first answer around Craigie Schubert. I suppose the word I like to use, I'm not sure if it's what you're going, is a feel for the game, and letting the game go and keeping an eye on those things. But does it actually have an impact on the game, depending on the seriousness of it? I think what I liked about Craig Joubert in his time is that certainly the later parts, I thought he was actually very good around the feel of it, and he would let things go, but then you could actually hear him on the technology, just sort of addressing that. Okay, I might have missed this, but I'll come back and sort it. Or he might actually just ask somebody on the run, but the game is actually still going. Right, he wouldn't stop the game, but he would actually check any foul play, or even, he was very good in terms of going with the flow of the game. If the game was going, he'd be able to commentate, and then you can actually hear his communication. So I think that's probably my answer to that, Ants, around that. But referees that can probably get a feel for the game, but then not brush what actually need to come back to, but getting the timing right so that we're not actually impacting on a lot of stoppages, which is a real challenge now, stopping the stoppages in the game. And I know there's laws around trying to scrum resets and all that. We can go in different areas around that, but I certainly think the game is getting faster, and it will continue to get faster. And the ball and play minutes are going up. The Ks that the players are covering are going up. The impact stats that we do, the reloading stats, obviously the S&C numbers in the gym. We are certainly dealing with a different generation now.
So talk about players and in their level, what they need to do to get to the higher level. Do you put any emphasis on them doing or understanding the laws and sitting law exams just to upskill them in that way as well?
We don't do law exams when they come to us, but it's a very good. I actually did a law exam. I'm a sort of World Rugby coach educator, so we don't have a choice. We have to make sure we're on top of the laws. So we do that as coaches. As players, I suppose there's an expectation there that they understand the laws when they come to our level, Mitre 10 Super, and then we have young players that come through that need to probably brush on a couple of interpretations of the law that they might not be used to. We make sure we look after them, but I think there's enough resources around now to get everyone up. Certainly at our level, we have a good base understanding of the laws, Ants. But as I said to you, our role is to bend them, don't break them. yeah. We try and bend them. We don't break them as much, but we find a way to actually get through the game. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I know we're trying to do a lot more in terms of players actually refereeing the game. Do you think that's good way for players to become smarter players is to understand refereeing and what they're looking at and why they're looking at it. And
yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to one of the answers that I mentioned to you. Once when you know a particular referee, and especially at Mitre 10 and Super, yeah, a lot of the players know the referees and they know their tendencies. But having an understanding of how they actually ref a game and what their tendencies are and how can you actually form a relationship to actually, to help the cause is really important. So yeah, once again, it's important that you have some form of understanding of who the referee is. How does he interpret this particular part of the game, and does that marry up with your game plan, or how do you actually make it work for you, and which are the areas you can't go to? All those sort of things, you need to understand. So you'd be surprised, Ants, at how much work we do actually do on some referees, and we do it in different ways.
Talk us through the process.
We'll do it over a beer or coffee, mate.
Would coaches do that at community level?
Well, would they? Or are you asking me, should they?
Or both. Would they and should they?
Well, I don't see any harm of not doing it. But I suppose it takes a lot of it takes a bit of effort to actually to do that, and I mean, I think it's a good idea to actually form some form of relationship, but also what it's like, Ants, it's the referees know the coaches know the referees know the players, and some of the referees are family, whatever all that is. So there is opportunity, I suppose, to really get on that, and I suppose sometimes it can be a barrier, and it does put stress on different positions, and obviously players take advantage of that. But as I said earlier, if you earn the respect for doing your job, if your job is actually to control the game in the right way, then whether you get it wrong or you don't, all those things is how you earn the respect, and it's no different to coaching as well, I suppose. But relationship and building that is really important from my point of view.
Nice. So another question here we've got from Hef. There are different levels of rugby in New Zealand: community, Mitre 10, Super Rugby. What's your expectation of referees from those that volunteer for community rugby in comparison to those whom are paid to referee in the professional era?
My expectations of those referees?
Yes.
Yeah, I certainly. It's a very good question. If it's a referee at the Mitre 10 and the Super Rugby level, there certainly is an expectation that they're good at their job in terms of understanding the dynamics of what happens at that level, and then versus a younger community referee where you probably need to be a little bit more patient. You probably need to have a lot more empathy towards some decisions, and you probably need to control your emotions a lot more. But certainly at the higher level, the more competition and competitiveness, the higher you get. There is an expectation that if you make that level as a referee, welcome to the jungle. You're competing like everyone else, so you'll be held accountable to a lot of questions and clarity and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't actually have it any other way, though, and that's the way it should be. And we've had some fantastic referees come through that. Interesting enough, I think I saw Mike, but I hope I don't embarrass you, Mike Fraser, but I remember Mike Fraser when he first came on the scene. He was sort of finding his feet, and at the time, but then as the years have gone on, and then from a player, and then watching him now as a coach, he's got to the level now where he's got a really good feel. Jacko's no different. Glenn Jackson, when he came through, some of those players have gone on to actually become good referees. There's an expectation when you get to that level that you understand the game, but then moving towards understanding the game within a game is really important. You know, managing people's emotions, managing your language towards leaders or captains. That, you know, how do you control your captain to make sure you get the message across and keep them under control? So you have a lot of that you need to make sure you manage. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Ant, but I think that's really important that you understand the different. You know, you can't come from, as an example, sometimes I'll give an example, if an All Black or Super Rugby player comes down to the club rugby, and we keep an eye on this quite a lot, actually, especially injured players that have to come down and get some club games, especially if they're part of our squad. You know, you're not bigger than the referee that's refereeing that club game that weekend. And if you actually stuff up, certainly under my watch, you get a talking to. So one of our values is really around respect and presentation. So I think it's really important that we understand that, because, as I said earlier, we're all there for the same reason, to keep this game going.
Nice. One from Smudgy.
Smudgy's
online. Smudgy.
Oh no, here we go. Be gentle, Smudgy.
No, it's actually pretty. It's a pretty straightforward question from Smudgy, to be honest. How do you set the boundaries when you have a new squad? And I guess we talk about referees coming together and setting standards and all the rest of it. I know we do that at Premier level. But in terms of a team setup, how do you go about setting those boundaries?
Yeah, very good question, Smudge. Good to see you, my old friend. Setting boundaries. I think a lot's been said around culture and obviously vision and purpose and all that. And what's really important is that you have a very clear understanding of what that looks like, and also then what does it actually not look like, and what are the ramifications and what are the consequences that are attached to it. And that's easier said than done, and it's pretty easy to put on a piece of paper, Ants. But the behaviours that come out of that, that's where the real juice is. You know, how do you actually monitor that, and how do you actually how do you keep that breathing and keep that alive? Those boundaries, to Smudge's question. How do you walk away from something that you actually should have done, and how do you let somebody else get away with it? And why do you know, all those things are really important as to how you monitor that, and how and what's the environment to offer the opportunity to do something about it, I suppose. And that's really important, because if it's not clear, then you have grey. And once you get grey, then you're in a little bit of trouble. And as long as you've got people that understand what's black and white, and you have the environment where you can actually do that, then I think that has to be really clear. And obviously the fundamental thing is to why. Why do you actually need to have boundaries around this and around that? And why is the consequence this? Why? It has to be linked back to the values that you started off with. Sometimes you have values that are unachievable. That you're in a little bit of trouble there. Sometimes you have values and behaviours that are hard to monitor and obviously hard to keep in line. So it's quite a deep exercise, but I think at certain levels there's different ways of actually implementing that. So, my friend Smudgy, is that too long of an answer for you, or was that grey? What did Smudgy say, Ants?
Smudgy, there's a lot of grey in his life, so yeah. You know what you say, it's going to be grey. So we've got about 10 minutes to go. So if you've got any questions, please fire them through on the chat. One I was sent through me before tonight is, in refereeing circles, it's commonly said that short pre-match chats are the best. Do you agree with that? And what does a good pre-match talk look like from your perspective as a coach?
A good pre-match speech. Well, from my point of view, if there was anything that needed to be discussed in a lot more depth or alignment, then that should have been done earlier in the week, and they normally are done from my point of view. That routine where they come in is more formalities, and it's more just getting the referee in amongst the players to get a feel for the change sheets, and for the actual players to also start formulating some pictures in their heads around what we need to do around the referees and the ARs. And so I think it's very valuable in terms of that side of things. But in terms of anything heavy, I think that needs to be done early in the week if need be. If not, then just shake hands, make sure the safety talk is done with the front rows and all that, and then and then just get into it. It's been I do get a sense of what. Obviously, I've been around for a while, but that's one part that I really like. I look forward to when the referee comes in, because I love watching people's reactions around, from players to the referees to the actual ARs. There's a couple of ARs on here that I've seen their names. They always come and take our lollies, and so it cracks me up. But once again, if you've got a relationship like that, then that's fine. So that's my view on it anyway, Ants.
So basically, get in, do the safety brief, get out.
Yeah. Well, what do the Well, I mean, it's a good question for you, Ants. Is what's the theme? What's the feedback from the referees? Do they like that? Is it too short? Is it too long? Or would they prefer more?
I know, speaking from me, I prefer to get in and out as fast as possible. Basically, the players have heard the same thing week after week. Referees might have a little bit different things that they look at compared to other referees, but basically I'm in and out within a minute, if possible. But that's just me.
Oh no, that's good. That's good. Yeah. I've had some coaches that their reputation, obviously when they come in, mate, you know you're going to get a dressing down. So it's quite funny. Everyone's quite different. From Chris Pollock, who used to come and sit on I remember Polly, I'm not sure if Polly's on this, but when he used to come in and get on the physio table and sometimes ask for a rub.
Right? It's different. Just a few more questions to finish off. Do you give your captains any development or learning around working with referees on the field? What to ask, when to ask, how to ask? And have you actually refereed yourself?
Yes and yes. First question around captains. Yep, absolutely vital. And it's very important in terms of picking your captain too. That's one thing that you need to factor in, is the relationship and what are the work-ons that he needs to have to communicate with referees and other stakeholders as well, but mainly the managing of a referee. Sometimes you have two captains that can look after that, and another one that can look after the team. But yes, to answer your question, it's very important that you keep developing them, and he's part of the leadership group, obviously. And then a couple of key things that they need to focus on, and giving feedback to them as to how they actually approach it, because you can always hear them. You can always hear them in terms of some of my captains I speak with lately, TJ. The difference between TJ Fayani and Blake Gibson is a subtlety in terms of how they actually communicate the message in a space of time. TJ has, there are different ways that he gets his message across compared to Blake, but Blake also has an effect in a different way communicating with a referee. So I think that to answer that question, yes. And the second part of that question, or the second question, have I refereed? I referee every Thursday our team run, because I like it. I enjoy it, and I like how you can manipulate some things, as a referee, so you can actually get the outcome you want. So every Thursday I do that. So I'm a terrible ref, but never mind.
I doubt that. Does it help you with a coach?
Yeah, no, it does. Some sessions we have a referee actually, Ants, and I think a couple of referees here. We've had, I think I had Angus, I had Marcus one time. We had a couple of Auckland refs to come through and just float around. And certainly when I was in Wellington, we had obviously we had Rob, we had Polly for the Hurricanes. He came through a couple of times. So yes, it's a very good exercise. Sometimes it just depends on what you want to achieve as coaches and referees. But I do know that referees are keen to get amongst it and help their learning as well.
Nice. And just to finish off, how has the cancellation of the club rugby so far, so the postponement of it, impacted your selection for the squad, for the Auckland squad in 2020, my team?
Yeah, geez, that's a really good question. It has impacted in a way that some of the contracting that was supposed to go on around this time has obviously stopped. But I'm very fortunate that we did most of our contracts earlier. I always like to get my squad nailed in the first half of the year. I'm very fortunate that I have obviously a union that can support me do that, and a board that sort of understands the vision that we're trying to get here. So it has impacted, but it also hasn't really impacted that much. What it has actually created is an awesome opportunity, because I've had a contenders program going for 2 or 3 years since I've been here, and it's basically our backup squad away from the Super Boys. And we are constantly working as if we're in season, like the Super team. So obviously training before and after hours, our work hours. So, we're getting prepared already at the moment. And it's even more important now that squad's up and running, because Super Rugby is looking most likely going to be, it's only going to be like 2 weeks or 3 weeks in between. So, some players will be injured from Super. It's going to be, as we all know, some of the referees are on this chat room now, that's going to be a hell of a local derby sort of matchup. So a lot of injuries, and we just got to make sure that we're prepared. So it's impacted me in a certain way, but then also it's created a lot of excitement and opportunities for others. And so I'm actually pretty pumped about it.
Cool. So prep's going well then, when it does eventually start, as best as possible.
Yes, prep's going well, and fingers crossed it still goes ahead. Hopefully they still have a comp.
Nice. Well, just want to finish off by saying thank you for tonight. Sorry I couldn't get to all your questions, but thank you, Alama, for tonight, and I look forward to having that beer with you and discussing refereeing in a bit more detail. So just thank you so much, and I'll see you in your office sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ants. And while I got the opportunity, thanks to all the refs for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you guys around the scene. And all the best. And stay safe.